If you follow the channel, you know when it comes to smart home devices, one of my favorite brands is Aqara. Why is that? It's because they make a wide variety of smart home devices. They sell them at affordable prices, and they tend to work with Apple Home, or for you old schoolers out there, Apple HomeKit. And I love that. That's my favorite smart home platform, if you don't know already. I also love that they make home security devices. And I'm a home security guy, so that's a big deal for me. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about Aqara's newest smart lock, the U50, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Let's get started. What up, everybody? George Langabeer here. Not only am I a smart home and home security YouTuber, but I also own SilverHammer Surveillance. And at SilverHammer Surveillance, we protect people. We help homeowners protect their homes, their family, and their stuff. And home security is very important to me. And when it comes to home security, I've got two favorite categories: security cameras and smart locks. And today we're talking about category number 2, smart locks, one from Aqara, the U50. I'm going to unbox it. I'm going to talk about setup and installation. I'm going to talk price and specs, and I'm going to give you my full review, pros and cons. So let's get to the unboxing. All right, now that we've unboxed, let's talk installation and setup. First up, we have installation. It's pretty easy. Don't let all the contents of the box overwhelm you because you don't need them all. First up, you're going to remove your existing hardware from your lock, your strike plate, and your bolt. Get all of that out of there. You're going to start from scratch. Then you're going to take the strike plate and the bolt from the U50 box. Now, as far as the bolt goes, you have two different lengths depending on the depth of your deadbolt. And all you got to do is give it a quarter turn to change that length. I had to give it a quarter turn to make it a little longer. Then you're going to put in the bolt and your strike plate and screw that on. Then you're going to go to the lock. You're going to take the keypad part of the lock, put it on the outside of your door. Then you're going to feed the wire connector underneath your bolt through the hole of your deadbolt. That's going to connect to the other side of the lock when you're done. Then you're going to install the mounting bracket. You're going to use the long screws to do that. That's going to screw into the keypad part of the lock. Then you're going to put on the inside part of the lock, and that's going to secure with two little screws. Then you're going to tighten all that up. Then you're going to install your 4 AA batteries. Now the U50 comes with 4 AA batteries. I just switched those out to 4 Energizer rechargeable AA batteries. Once your batteries are installed, you're good to go. Let's talk about setup. You're going to get the Aqara app if you haven't already. You're going to go to Add Accessory. You can go down to the list here. There's the U50. That's going to give you instructions. Please put your phone close to the door lock, open the battery cover, and short press the settings button. It's going to give you a random code for verification. You're going to enter that code to complete the verification. Then you're going to name your lock. Put it in a room. Then you're going to put in the card information, just like any other Aqara device. Then you're going to add a user. You can create a password, name the user, Then you're going to go through a calibration process, and it gives you instructions on how to do so. Then after that, you can add your other users, your family members and such. Now, I added this lock straight to the Aqara app because I like the Aqara app. A lot of times I use it over the Apple Home app just because there's so many features in there. They've got great automations in the Aqara app, and you can also get your firmware updates that way. But if you wanted to, you could do this lock just on Apple Home on its own, or once you've added the lock to the Aqara app, you can still add it to Apple Home, and that way you can use HomeKey. To add it to Apple Home, you're going to remove that plate on the front of the lock. You're going to scan your HomeKit code. It's going to add the lock. You can name the lock. Then you can set up HomeKey. And so with HomeKey, you've got your tap to unlock. Then you can set up your access codes. And if you have your family members already set up from previous locks or whatever, it'll already be in there. Then you can add which automations you want with the lock. And then you're good to go. Before we talk price and specs, I want to briefly thank Aqara for sending me the U50. This is not a sponsored video. They just sent it to me to try out. Not that it matters, because sponsored or not, I'm always going to tell you like it is. Price. The U50 is currently $149.99. Now keep in mind, this is all at time of this recording. There is a 20% off promotion going on. Get it while it lasts. But $149.99 current price. Moving on to specs. All right, first up, even without an Aqara hub, you've got Apple Home compatibility and Apple HomeKey. You add a Matter-enabled Aqara hub, you've got Google Home, Lady A from Amazon. Matter is a wonderful thing. Now keep in mind, if you're an Apple Home lover like me, you technically do not need the Aqara hub. You can just do it with Apple Home on its own. Now there are some other features available in the Aqara app. We're going to talk about that in a bit, but technically you don't need the Aqara app or an Aqara hub to set this up. When it comes to accessing the lock, you have a few different options. You have PIN codes or passcodes. NFC, so you can use your watch, your phone, or little NFC cards. You can use Siri. You can manually unlock and lock from the Aqara app or the Apple Home app in my case. And you've also got a little slide down here where you can use physical keys. And speaking of keys, the U50 can be rekeyed, which is exciting because the previous lock, the U100, you could not, at least not easily. You've got Zigbee and you've also got Bluetooth 5.0. This has an IPX5 weather rating, so it's pretty waterproof, pretty weatherproof, and it's rated to negative 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I haven't got to test the full range of this, but Aqara says you can get up to 6 months of battery life, and it is powered by 4 AA batteries. I haven't got to test the full 6 months, but so far so good as far as the battery percentage. All right, those are the basic specs. Let's talk about some of the highlights from the Aqara app. All right, talking about some of my favorite highlights with the Aqara app as far as this lock goes. Number one, we've got alarms. So you can set different alarms depending on the status of the door because you do have that gyroscope. So let's say you left the door open and you left it open for a certain duration. You can get an alarm for that. So that's pretty cool. Also in the Aqara app, you've got your auto lock. Now I think this is an important feature because you can set that so when you leave, the door will automatically lock behind you in case you forget to lock it. Now I've had some issues with this. I'm going to talk about that in my cons, but we'll discuss that in a few. Then because this has a gyroscope built in, you have your door sensing. It'll sense the different status of the door. So whether it's open, closed. Now I also use an Aqara door and window sensor on this door, so I kind of have that doubled up. Again, I've been having some issues with the door sensing feature on the lock itself. I'll talk about that in the cons. You also have swipe to lock. So if you're leaving, you can just swipe the keypad and it'll lock the door. You also have a lock icon that you can press, but the swipe's a little easier because as you're walking away, you can kind of just swipe it and forget about it. Then the door will lock. I've got the doorbell out here, the Aqara G4. I did a review on that doorbell, check that out. But it's pretty cool because then you can have it right here on your lock screen. So you can see what's going on outside your door as you're controlling the lock. I really like that. All right, that was some highlights from the Aqara app. Let's talk about some highlights from the Apple Home app using the U50. Talking about the highlights in Apple Home, you've got manual lock and unlock. You can control that right from the Apple Home interface. Of course, you control your lock with Siri. That's the beautiful thing about having this in Apple Home. You can control your user access through Apple Home, so your different family members and your access codes. You've got your different automations you can do with your lock. And this is where you can also set up notifications through Apple Home. Now, I do love the Aqara app and I use it a lot, but of course, my basic functions, I do tend to do that through Apple Home. All right, let's talk about my review, my pros and cons. What do I think of the Aqara U50? Let's start with my pros. Number one, Apple HomeKey. I don't care if you got fingerprints, passcodes, every fancy way to open a lock known to man. I'm going to use Apple HomeKey. I love walking up with my Apple Watch or my iPhone and using it that way. So Apple HomeKey, the number one pro to this lock. But another big one, especially for somebody like me who's a renter, it's great that this lock can be rekeyed. It's just a Schlage key, and you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever it may be and get this rekeyed, or even a locksmith, whatever you want to do. But that's awesome. So in my case, my maintenance person can still get in, my landlord can still get in an emergency. You know, some landlords don't want you to change out your lock, but in this case, it really doesn't matter because you can rekey it to what you need to. Now, some people worry about this. Smart locks can be too smart sometimes, and when they go dumb on you, you can't get in. Now, this has an emergency USB port on the bottom, so that way you can charge this in an emergency. So if your batteries go dead or whatever, you can still get in, and that's important. So that's a pro. Now, I love that this is compatible with Apple Home, and I love the features in Apple Home, but the Aqara app is almost a smart home platform on its own. They make so many different devices, and a lot of times I use the Aqara app over the Apple Home app. So it's great that you can have both. And in the Aqara app, you've got a lot of extra features you can add to this lock. So that's cool. And that's a pro that you've got both options. To go along with that, that means you have a ton of automation options, both with Apple Home and the Aqara app. So you can do all sorts of cool things with automations in this lock. My final pro is how easy it was to install and set up. You can have this lock installed and ready to go in under 10 minutes. So that's a definite pro. All right, those were my pros. Let's talk about my cons. Before I do, I want to say I think every smart home creator and their mom made a review on this lock last week at the time of release. And I think that's great because you want to get your reviews out at the time of release. The brand wants you to. People out there buying the lock want to be educated and want that review right away. Well, I gave myself an extra week because I was having some issues and I wanted to see if I could work through the bugs because some of those other creators weren't having these issues. But I'm still having them, so I'm going to talk about them. Now, the first two involve the extra features you gain from the Aqara app. One is auto lock, a very important feature because it gives you the peace of mind of thinking your smart lock is locking behind you in case you forget. So you want that to work because otherwise somebody could just walk in. Now, I had the Schlage Encode Plus here for a long time, and I can 100% guarantee you that every time I left here, that lock was going to lock behind me. With the Aqara U50, that happens about 70% of the time, 30% of the time that does not work. That 30% can be a big deal because if I just left here thinking it's going to automatically lock and it doesn't, somebody could just walk in here. So I find myself using the lock icon on the outside of the lock or swiping the lock to make sure that it's locked. And yes, that's a good idea anyway, but if you think in your head that you have an auto lock feature, you might forget to do that. So it could be a big deal when it doesn't work. So I 100% think that Aqara will fix this because they're great at doing that through firmware updates. And this is a new product, but right now that's not working 30% of the time for me. Next up, we got the door sensing feature because this lock has a built-in gyroscope, which in theory is pretty cool. But I find that doesn't always work and it doesn't know its status a lot of the time. So I've got an Aqara door and window sensor on my door and that I can rely on for the status of my door. I can go in the Aqara app or the Home app and see if my door is locked that way, but the door sensing feature doesn't work like it's supposed to, at least not now. Another con is that this lock only comes in one color, satin black. That's a con because a lot of people want all their hardware to match aesthetically. And if your door latch or whatever is a different color, it won't match. Now, me personally, that drives me nuts and my hardware didn't match. So I actually had Teresa, who works at Lowe's, bring me home a door latch that matches to fix that problem. But I shouldn't necessarily have to do that. We should have some more options. To go along with the satin black color, sometimes if you're just standing looking at the door, it's hard to see if your door is locked because it's so dark and hard to tell. Sometimes you just want to stand there and say, hey, did I lock the door? And look behind you. Sometimes that's hard to see. I know it's a little nitpicky thing, but it is the case. And then lastly, I wish this lock had thread. You know, the Schlage Encode Plus had thread, and I just find that made that lock perform a little bit better and it was a little faster. Now with HomeKey, which is how I used it the most, it's still pretty damn fast, don't get me wrong. But I think with Thread, it might be even a little faster. So I wish this lock had it. All right, those were my cons. Let's talk about some final general thoughts. Now, there is not a smart lock out there that's going to keep out every thief known to man. It's just not going to happen. But for the price, I find this lock to be pretty well made. It's got a zinc alloy build, and yeah, it does the job just fine, especially for the price. Let's compare it to the U100. That's Aqara's smart lock from last year that also had the fingerprint sensor. I find that this lock is a lot less buggy than that one. That one had some issues. They slowly but surely got through it with firmware update, but right out of the gate, this one's better. And also compared to the U100 out of the gate, that one had some battery life issues. This one's going strong as far as battery life goes. Now, I haven't tested it the full 6 months, but so far so good. And also talking about the U100, because of HomeKey, I don't find myself missing the fingerprint at all. So for a better value, I'll go for it without the fingerprint, no problem. And we need to keep the HomeKey locks coming because this is one of 5 HomeKey smart locks in the US right now. That's not very many. Same thing with video doorbells in Apple HomeKit. There's not enough. So everything Apple HomeKit, we need more. Bring on the Apple Home compatibility, please. All right, that's it. That's my full review of the Aqara U50 smart lock. What do you think? Are you a fan of Aqara? Are you a fan of Apple Home? Man, Aqara and Apple Home go together like peanut butter and jelly. I love it. You know, I was at CES 2024 this year. It was my first CES. Check out my video I did on that experience. I had so much fun. Aqara, of all the brands there, had me the most excited about the future. The smart home future is bright, man, and Aqara is at the forefront. A lot of those products have already come out since then, and that's cool, but more to come, and that's exciting. Well, let me know what you think. Is there another smart home lock that I should be trying out there? Is there another Aqara product that I haven't reviewed you'd like to see me review? Let me know that in the comments. But whether you're a past, future, present subscriber, it doesn't matter because I appreciate you all very much. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching. And until the next video, peace and love.